If you grew up in the 1970s and feel weirdly out of place in today's world, it's probably not because you can't keep up. Psychology actually suggests something else. Your brain was shaped in a tiny slice of history that doesn't exist anymore, and the traits it gave you are starting to look rare. People might say you're just nostalgic, but notice this. When you see kids today glued to screens or parents tracking every movement, you don't just think, wow, things changed. You think, we were raised on a completely different planet. Let's talk about what that planet did to you. You were a kid at the intersection of two worlds. Technology was simple, danger was real, adults were busy, and no one was curating your childhood experience. You weren't the center of the universe. You were expected to figure things out. That combination wired your psychology in some very specific ways. How you handle boredom, how you respond to crisis, how you deal with being alone, and why you can sit in a waiting room without losing your mind. Quick question before we go deeper. When you look back at your childhood, does it feel more like, I was so lucky, or I had to grow up fast because no one was holding my hand? I'm genuinely curious how you see it, so drop that in the comments when you're ready. Now, one of the biggest things that sets you apart is how you learn to handle boredom. If you told an adult in the 70s, I'm bored, you didn't get an activity list. You got a look that meant, that's your problem. Maybe a chore if you pushed it. So you improvised. You tore through library books. You rode your bike with no destination. You turned a pile of sticks into a fortress. You learned to take absolutely nothing and turn it into something. Psychology would call that self-initiated problem solving. You weren't being entertained. You were generating your own momentum. Kids who get that kind of unstructured time tend to grow into adults who can walk into an empty afternoon, an undefined job, or a vague problem and just start. The upside, you're creative and strangely capable in situations where no one's telling you what to do. The shadow side, asking for help might still feel awkward. Depending on others can feel like weakness because your entire nervous system is wired to think, no one's coming, I'll figure it out. Another thing that stands out about 70s kids is your relationship with risk. You climbed trees with questionable branches. You rode in the back of cars with loose seatbelts or none at all. You experimented with fireworks, homemade ramps, and whatever you could jump off of. Every bruise, every near miss, every that was dumb moment was your nervous system learning the difference between this could actually kill me and this will hurt, but I'll be fine. Studies often find that kids who experience real-world physical risk in play grow up with better threat detection and lower baseline anxiety. You're not fearless, you're calibrated. So now, as an adult, when something goes wrong at work or there's a family emergency, you don't immediately melt down. You switch into, okay, what needs doing mode. The upside? You're the steady one when things get messy. The downside? People sometimes think you're emotionally distant because you're calm when they're spiraling. Inside, you care. You just learned early that panic doesn't fix broken bones or broken plans. Then there's your comfort with being alone. You grew up in a world where your room, your backyard, or a quiet field were all normal places to spend an afternoon. Music on the stereo, staring at the ceiling, walking alone just to think, sitting with your own mind without instant distraction. Psychology suggests that people who grew up before constant digital stimulation often have a stronger capacity for genuine solitude, not isolation, just being with themselves. That's why you can sit in silence on a long drive and not need to fill it. You can stand in a line and not immediately reach for a screen. Your mind learned to be its own company. The gift. You have depth. You can reflect. You can notice your own thoughts without trying to drown them out. The cost? People might misread your need for quiet as disinterest. You might want connection, but you don't chase it the way always online culture expects, so others assume you're fine on your own. Your entire childhood also trained your patience in ways you probably forget. You waited all week for one episode of a show. If you missed it, that was it. You took photos and didn't see them until the film came back. You called a friend, and if they weren't home, you just didn't talk to them. All of that is delayed gratification practice, over and over. Psychology links that with stronger impulse control and long-term thinking. So of course, endless scrolling and instant delivery don't feel that satisfying to you. You're used to the slow burn, building a career, saving for something big, sticking with people for decades. The strength? You can do boring, consistent work. You understand commitment. The frustration? Living in a world that treats everything as disposable can make you feel like you're from another era, because you are. And underneath all of this is something deeper. You were raised with huge stretches of unsupervised freedom. Go outside, and that was it. No GPS, no constant check-ins. You settled arguments without an adult mediating. You decided which friend group to stay with, when to leave, how far was too far. You learned judgment by using it. Psychology would say that builds an internal sense of control, the feeling that your choices actually matter. So now, as an adult, if something needs to be organized, you naturally step up. You're used to being responsible for yourself. The bright side, you're reliable. You adapt. You don't wait around for permission. The heavy side? People assume you're always okay because you act like you've got it handled. You might carry a lot silently because handling it is what you've always done. Here's the bigger picture. You are not old-fashioned. You're calibrated for a world where attention was scarce, movement was normal, and childhood wasn't micromanaged. That wiring doesn't always match the notification era, but it's not a defect. It's a different template. So if you've ever felt too independent, too calm, too quiet, or too patient for the way life works now, maybe that's not something to fix. Maybe it's something to understand. If this sounded uncomfortably accurate, you're probably not the only 70s kid who feels that way. Let me know what hit hardest in the comments, and if you like research-based breakdowns that actually explain why you are the way you are, hit subscribe. There's a lot more to unpack.